Assalamualaikum and good day. My name is Nushanis Aina binti Sharijab with matrix ID 2020 984319, and I am the first presenter. As I am going to introduce for our topic, theory of states. So we have taken the main topic for it to be social contract theory. So the modern term state is derived from the word status. It was Niccolo Machiavelli who first used the phrase state in his writings. His important work is titled as Prince. As reported by Aristotle, the state is the most universal and most powerful of all social institutions. The state is a natural institution. He is a social animal by nature and a political being, and to him, to live in a state and to be a man were inseparable. State is the highest form of human association. It is a society of families and villages having for its end a perfect end self. It exists of the basic needs of life and continues to remain for the sake of good life. The concept of social contract theory is that within the beginning, men lived within the state of nature. They had no government and there was no law to control them. There have been hardships and injustice on the sections of the society. People sought protection of their lives and property by the primary pact of unionists. People undertook to respect one another and live in peace and harmony, and as a result of it, a society was formed. By the second pact of subjectionists, people united together and pledged to obey an authority and surrendered the entire or a part of their freedom and rights to an authority. Thus, they need to agree to determine society by collectively and reciprocally renouncing the rights they had against each other within the state of nature, and that they must invade some one person or assembly of persons with the authority and power to enforce the initial contract. They have to both confirm to live together under common laws and build an enforcement mechanism for the social contract and also the laws that constitute it so as to make sure they shake off the state of nature. Hence, the authority of the government or the sovereign or the state came into being due to the two agreements.
Limitation of social contract towards society, nation-state and government. The association, which is further divided into various categories like pressure or interest group etc., is another relatively new term. The accord applies to a grouping that appears to be closer to a state than to an association. A community of people with shared interests is an organization. The agreement arises from a state of nature within which individuals seek to urge out of the state of nature, which suggests they need a mutual interest. They try to pressure their innate instinct of aggression and greed as a third house to create a peaceful society or to know from it in term of protecting their right. The association membership is voluntary, although the accord still applies to an organization that is founded on the need of people. The state is additionally a territorial organization, but the agreement does not apply to the state system under which the territory form a component of it. Within the fashionable time, belonging to a state is mandatory, while only those willing to abandon the agreement is additionally aligned in step with the agreement, which suggests the state is not a permanent or an obligatory body. In line with the speculation of accord, modern interaction have shown that a non-public must belong to the state. Many of them belong to an organization or might not, but they have to belong to the state. Example, someone may belong to quite and one organization, but he is a state member. We may conclude that the state could be a mixture of assorted alliance operating independently for his or her own advantages. A state of operation is much wider than that the association. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Runaja binti Abdul Halim, metric number 2020955637. My point is pragmatic importance of social contract in the case of refugee crisis. Although a hypothetical hypothesis has intrigued scientists for decades, the social contract has been pragmatic. It must be explored whether the definition of social contract affects exacting international scenarios and the legal structure of the state. The legal basis of social contract and their basis proposal in relation to individual, state and citizen of other state, and ultimately state and state. Social contract scientists stress the 28 necessities of the state by addressing the topic of human nature. Furthermore, as the world is seen as a global village, the global social contract should give us more reason for concern. Social contract scientists emphasize the importance of state due to human nature's need for more protection. Additionally, the entire social contract principle will be banned if states rationally claim that they are not able to accept refuge because they do not want to share their private property laws with anybody. Because nobody else invested in their own private property, the country has found their own future, collected their wealth, and used their own tools. In addition, after the establishment of a social contract, the refugee crisis defeats the concept of a peaceful state. There are responsibilities to those who do not live in the province. It is the demand of the advanced international regulatory order. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum, Doctor. My name is Unku Mama Amka. And my metric number is 2020990291. Today I'm going to present about the hobbies argument and the situations of refugees. One of the philosophers that mentions about hobbies is James Rachels, that throw a light on the hobbies argument in his book, which is the elements of moral philosophy. As humans, we have certain requirements, and these fundamental requirements are prevalent in all humans. But we do not have enough of them if we look at the resource. The point of fact is that if someone has resources in favor of someone else, he will not give easily his resource. This rule appears to be relentless, and human beings are conscious of it. Next, the only way to get out of existence is to cooperate, join hands, and come next to each other. There is a chance that individuals can get all the necessary support they need by coming close to each other and sharing the available resource. One should be able to rely on his ability and relies on the abilities of others. By collaborating and by sacrificing, a chain of values will be established that will make everyone happy. Once everybody continues to behave in this manner, a mechanism will be put in place to ensure that everybody is happier than the state of nature. A government should be formed in order to accomplish the according to hobbies. And lastly, the social contract is the one that hobbies create, which is the arrangement by which any person may assert their rights. The theory of social contract also clarifies the essence of morality, according to James Rachels, while according to the Hobbian point of view, these moral codes established as a result of agreements between people are enforced by the state. The codes on which their whole social life depends, and the state as a system ensure that moral codes are followed. That's all for me. Thank you.
The next theory of a case of refugee crisis is morality of refugee accommodation and prisoner's dilemma. The international community works to provide stability and aims to accept refugees from war-torn nations. Countries are not affluent and economically prosperous in the ongoing refugee crisis. as many other European countries support them to accommodate refugees from other countries. Nevertheless, wealthy nations often enable developing countries to share their burdens. The discrepancy in terms of sharing the burden of refugees has contributed to a breach of international rules and security. It has therefore been observed that countries hosting refugees are asking for international assistance, and if the assistance is refused, the treatment of refugees is treated. In the case of refugees, the prisoner's dilemma will understand the various strategies used by refugees to resolve the issue. James Rachel's interpretation of the prisoner's dilemma. There can be 4 cases in which refugees can behave selfishly and whose countries can act benevolently. Second, host countries can behave selfishly and refugees can behave benevolently. Otherwise, it is possible for both refugees and host countries to act selfishly and both refugees and host country to act benevolently. Moreover, from this scenario, refugees will be better off in a situation where other citizens will be benevolent. Then the host country will respect the demand of refugees. In the case of the current Syrian refugee crisis, however, the option to go to Europe could outweigh their choice to go to neighboring countries such as Turkey or Lebanon. Otherwise, as host country behave benevolently, there will be refugees. Refugees will not neglect this, but one of the choice will be considered. Third, the host countries will be willing to behave selfishly and will not accommodate any refugees, whereas by protesting or moving against the host countries, refugees feel their right to be abused and often act selfishly. The worst case may be refugees are willing to go anyway, but no country is willing to accept them, government or regulatory agency. However, sometimes that can guarantee that both sides share the rights of each other. If the interest of another side is acknowledged by one side, the other side should also accept the interest of the first side.
The next point that I'm going to present is about the case of Afghan and Syrian refugee crisis. The recent Syrian refugee crisis is remarkably close to the Afghan refugees crisis of the 1980s. The refugee crisis in Afghanistan is the prime example of refugees emerging as a diaspora and eventually being part of the host country culture. In terms of adaptation, the Afghan refugees crisis also highlights the potential implications for the host country, as well as the refugees themselves. Next, most recently, there has been an intensification of government efforts and policies to allow Afghan refugees to Afghanistan. Between 2002 and 2050, there were 3.9 million refugees repatriated from Pakistan to Afghanistan. Instead, many Afghans have embarked on a journey to Europe, North America, and Australia in fear of returning to a country that remains gripped by war. For the host country, the influx of Syrian refugees can cause several problems. Furthermore, huge inflows can also bring significant strain on the climate and social infrastructure. Such issues become more severe when burden sharing through international assistance is limited. The developing nations which host large number of refugees have a huge additional burden on an already weak economy to take care of them. From the globalization of the Afghan and Syrian crisis, both need the active interventions of any representative of the international community. The series of events that have raised the issue of the refugee crisis in Afghanistan are almost the same as the Syrian refugee crisis. The international community is now responsible for helping host nations accept these refugees. That's all for me.
And Assalamualaikum, my name is Nursaida binti Suhaimi. Today I will present about social contact of the refugee. The refugee crisis is very serious and challenging social problem for policymakers that require a multidimensional and interdisciplinary analysis approach. It helps us improve the situation but also investigate the structure of social engineering and understand many dynamic social problems. But on other hand, the philosophical advancement has caused some complications as well. The academic world became more sensitive and scholars began to see every sociology changing the plans of the social philosophy. Human rights are very demanding, but legal and social scientists must compromise on human rights in the name of the rule of law. The state of nature is more afraid of the unidentified. Socially, on the other hand, unity, peace, and stability between the various strata of society to maintain order, protect their property. Modern society and its problem demand sacrifice rather than accepting our rights. The diversity of problems can only be overcome with sacrifice. But the social contact itself is tolerant, do not sacrifice. When the problem of the refugee is so complicated, they spend their tentacle in all areas of life including social dimension, politics, religion, and language. Contacting on the basic compromise or getting someone right does not seem to work. The concept of social contact determines the responsibility and priorities of what the state feels. Thus, hierarchy is clearly shown and in that drive development. Sustainable social contact look like is broken. Refugee contact willing to send a contact with the host of the country and aware of the fact that its contact is not permanent. That's all for me for social contact of the refugee. Thank you.
To conclude our group assignments, we can see that the social contract theory of area of the thinkers was different from one another. Hobbes first originated the concept that man was a sovereign individual, and thanks to his own personal experiences during the English War, he concluded that every one of the rights of the sovereign individual had to be surrendered for man to create a society. Locke made his own modifications and argued that man had certain rights and therefore the sovereign could not claim complete immunity for his actions. Rousseau took the fundamental concept that man was a sovereign individual, so made his own arguments which produced a totally different theory of social contract. The thesis regarding refugee crisis was a tiny low effort to challenge the recent and exciting paradigms in agreement studies, refugee studies, and therefore the values of policy studies. The discussion within the final part of the thesis and case studies clear a number of the sides of the agreement ideas at micro level and its role in situations like refugee crisis and state decisions compromising the human rights. We could conclude that prevailing paradigms in agreement theory argues within the favor of its success at national level. That's all for our group assignment. Thank you.